Welcome, rookies. Pull up a chair. Consider this explainer your, official mentor sit down. Look, if you've been staring at the latest data and feeling a little panic set in, well, you're definitely not alone. The California real estate market is quite literally shifting right underneath our feet. And to survive, you've got to understand what the numbers are actually saying, not just what the mainstream media is screaming about. So today, we're decoding the latest First Tuesday Journal data from May 2026. We're going to look at the hard numbers, figure out why the heck your listings are just sitting on the market, and hand you the tactical playbook to survive and, yeah, actually thrive in this wild environment. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our game plan for today. We're covering the current market reality, the median price myth, why home prices get stuck, and finally, strategies for agent survival. Let's get moving. All right, Section 1, the current market reality. So what's actually happening out there on the ground? Well, buyers are exhausted. And as an agent, you really need to understand the macroeconomic forces keeping them on the sidelines. We're dealing with high mortgage rates, buyer caution driven by political upheaval, trade taxes, and out-of-state policies impacting immigration. It's basically a massive cocktail of hesitation. But check out these numbers, comparing February 2026 to February 2025. It absolutely destroys the myth of a uniform housing market. The low tier, it saw a tiny little bump of 0.5%. But the mid-tier actually dropped by 0.3%, and then the high tier eked out a 0.8% gain. This proves a totally crucial rule for us. You cannot look at the market as one giant uniform block. Properties in different tiers move for vastly different reasons. If you try to price a low-tier starter home using the exact same logic as a high-tier luxury estate, you're going to misprice it, and your seller, they're going to be furious when it just sits there. And sitting there is exactly what these properties are doing. Right? Our spring bounce this year, yeah, it started early, but it was fundamentally weaker than last year. And as sales volume slows down, our for sale inventory is just swelling up. It's basic supply and demand, folks. This is placing some serious downward pressure on California home prices. You have to remember, your buyers are smart. They're comfortably sitting out, waiting to sense that the decline is actually over. They're trying to time the exact bottom before they jump back in. Moving on to Section 2, the median price myth. Listen, if you want to price a home correctly in a market where buyers are this hyper-cautious, you've got to unlearn some bad habits. There's this quote from the First Tuesday Journal, and honestly, you should burn it into your memory. For the vast majority of properties sold or for sale, the median is a mathematical distortion. I mean, wow, that is the hard truth of real estate right there. The median price, it means absolutely nothing in the real world. Why? Because it's just a statistical point that fits literally zero actual properties. You can't just walk out your front door and point to a median-priced home. It doesn't exist. It's just an average thrown around by talking heads on TV to simplify a massively complex market. Think about the contrast here. You have the media's numerical alchemy, this flawed one-price-fits-all abstraction, versus our actual tool as professionals, the Case-Shiller Index. Case-Shiller actually tracks tiered pricing. It shows how low, mid, and high-tier properties are moving relative to each other. Remember those numbers we looked at earlier? The rate and extent of changes in property values vary dramatically between those specific tiers. Low-tier properties are super volatile. They react incredibly quickly to market shifts. But high-end properties, they're much slower to react. So if you're basing your CMA on the city's median price, man, you are doing your client a massive disservice. Which brings us to Section 3, why home prices get stuck. Let's zoom out a bit and see how this builds into the broader economic picture. We really need to understand the underlying realities keeping your listings from selling. And to do that, we have to look back at history, specifically the kind of stagnation we saw in Japan's 1990s real estate crash. As an agent right now, you are going to run into sellers who are suffering from something economists actually call the money illusion. This concept here, price persistence, or what we often call sticky prices, is huge. It's the tendency of listed prices in owner-occupied homes to just resist change. The market drops, right? But the seller completely refuses to lower their price. They've anchored their expectations to the absolute peak of the market 2 years ago. They are holding out for yesterday's prices, even as the entire landscape shifts right underneath them. And honestly, as an agent, this is going to be your biggest hurdle. You've got to find a way to break that money illusion. So the absolutely crucial point here is how those sticky prices lead directly to this next concept, illiquidity. Because sellers refuse to accept the true current cash value of their homes, they literally can't cash out. The property just sits there, the market freezes up, and this causes a vicious cycle of price stagnation. Sure, it artificially inflates the market on paper, but in reality, no deals are happening. The slump just gets unnaturally prolonged.
But hey, it's not just the seller's psychology at play here. It's the actual mechanics of the market itself. Take a look at this concept of search frictions. Basically, this is the sheer difficulty of hunting down a property, getting through a gatekeeper, which, let's face it, is us, the agents, and negotiating an appropriate, realistic price. When you combine these search frictions with the heavy mortgage debt overhang trapping homeowners, meaning they literally cannot afford to sell because they're sitting in negative equity, you get a frozen MLS. Deals that absolutely should happen just don't. These frictions are actively preventing the market from correcting and stabilizing.
All right, let's turn things around in Section 4, Strategies for Agent Survival. Okay, take a deep breath. I know that was a lot of heavy economic reality, but let's open the playbook now and hand you the actual toolkit to make a living and close deals in this downturn. Step 1 to surviving: you can personally overcome those search frictions we were just talking about. How? By doing the hard work and due diligence upfront. Figure out exactly what it is you're selling before you ever list it. Then put together what First Tuesday Journal calls a humble, comprehensive package. I'm talking the transfer disclosure statement, natural hazard disclosure, title reports, operating expenses, neighborhood stats, the whole shebang. Have it all ready to go. So when a buyer's agent comes knocking, you just hand them a complete package so their buyer can make a fast, informed decision. You are literally removing the friction yourself.
Next up, you really need to master proper valuation methods. Remember what we discussed? Abandon that median price entirely. Just toss it out. You need to set your price ceilings based on true cash value. And how do you do that? By studying hard comparables. I mean, the exact same house model in the exact same demographic tract. Look closely at the cost per square foot, which is also known as replacement cost. And hey, don't be afraid to utilize income analysis methods, even for residential properties. Investors use cap rates for a reason, right? It brings pure rationality to the math. If you can teach your sellers to think like rational investors, you can cure them of that money illusion. Finally, let's have some real talk about your personal revenue. Sales volume is objectively low right now, so to protect your livelihood, you need specific tactics. First, target cash buyers. They simply aren't paralyzed by high mortgage rates because, well, they aren't getting mortgages. Second, it's time to pivot to some recession-proof side hustles. Becoming a property manager right now is a brilliant move. When owners can't sell, but they absolutely have to move, they have to rent their places out. They need management. Be the person who provides it. Diversify what your brokerage offers to hedge against this uncertain economy. It's a real game changer.
Let's leave it right there for this explainer. Look, the data is clear, the economic forces are laid bare, and your survival strategies are fully outlined. We are shifting from an absolute frenzy into a highly technical, highly demanding environment. So the only question left for you is this: do you have the hustle, the humility, and the knowledge to adapt, or will you just be left behind? Study those pricing tiers, master your valuations, remove the friction for buyers, and get to work. I'll see you out there.